when you mention about technical and operational, if we focus on technical, as you said, more matches, more playing minutes, but do you think that it would be a shock to the players suddenly to play more matches? All this while they have not used to be playing 18 matches?
Yeah, I think the national team players probably, I'm just going back to probably the memories when I was called up, and that season, I think it was the longest season I've had, because actually you don't really see off-season, because when you're supposed to have a break, you're actually in Suzuki Cup. The rest of the players gets the break. So I think the national players will be quite used to it, because they don't really have much breaks. They really do play throughout the whole year. But largely those who don't play for the national team, maybe, yes, their breaks will be cut short a little bit. I think the coaches will need to prepare the pre-season a little bit different to what usually is prepared, because it's a longer league. I think everyone who is in the technical aspect will know that a strong pre-season, you have a larger chance of not having as much injuries as someone who probably doesn't have a good pre-season. So I think those aspects will go under the technical aspect, the coaches, the players. Of course, changes is never easy. So yes, it will be the trial and error year, I would believe.
If we talk about more matches, like you said, players have to adapt. At the same time, do you think the clubs or planning part from the clubs for a longer break, for a longer season, lesser breaks, would that result in extra fatigue from the players?
Yeah, I believe if it doesn't go to plan, pre-season is one of them. Maybe what their usual practice during international breaks for players who don't get called up. But we also have to go back to the other side. Whenever that there is a long break in between the league, this has been a debate between the fans for many years, since my playing days until now, responsible over a club. We probably have 2 or 3 pre-seasons in one season in Malaysian League due to various demands that has happened previously with national team coaches needing more time, or for whatever reason, international competition where clubs are playing in a regional competition, and the league wants the club to do well, but the league takes a break, and that gives 2 to 3 weeks where coaches probably need to design another pre-season. So are we putting A and B together? And I think it will be a year where we'll find out. A lot of things will be fine-tuned. As I said, changes are not easy, but I believe if you want to achieve something which is more minutes, more games, I think that has already been achieved with the change. The rest, I think, will need to be worked out and fine-tuned as we go through the real experience of a 2023 season.
Okay, still on the technical part of these changes, this restructure, what do you see as the biggest obstacle for clubs to adapt?
Depth.
Okay.
I think what happens is, I think traditionally we do see some teams fall off the perch a little bit, purely because some teams are built on 12 or 13 players. Some teams are built on 15 or 16 players. Some built on 8. Some built on 25. Some built on 30 solid players. And this is where later, I believe you're heading there soon, it's the cost bit, right? But staying on the technical aspect, I think depth is absolutely crucial. You're going to have injuries, you're going to have suspensions, you're going to have various kind of issues when you're asking someone to devote to such high-level elite performance for 10 months in a year. But that's where also the under-23 plays a part, or having enough bank of players coming through the ranks to replace players who are, experienced in the Super League.
So, having more matches, as you said, it would open up spot for the players from under-23, President and Piala Belia. And looking back, do you think it's better now for these players to transition from the President for under-23, under Piala Belia? Is this a huge step, or the gap with the senior team and the youth team, development team, is a little bit closer?
I think that's a really good question, Rajan. I think we are facing a very unique position at this current time in mankind. We face 2 years of probably non-existence of underage tournaments. So imagine that this year I'm facing the under-21 players. They've not played for 2 years of football. and they're all waiting if they're going to make it Super League. And I believe the entire ecosystem, a generation of 2 years lost football will never be replaced. And we're going to tell 95% of the players around the ecosystem that you're not going to make it to the Super League. You got to go and work in a bank, you got to go and work anywhere, but football career is practically done in a professional context. Maybe they might play M3, they might go and play social football, but certainly not Super League, because that's then them done. What we've done here, we've extended 2 years. A chance for that generation to continue 2 more years to again, try to live their dreams of becoming professional footballers. I think that from a human value, that alone is good. But then we have to look at the professional value. I think 2 years more, you never know which players are going to extend their career because of that under 23. And it's not their fault. It's not a fault of their own that 2 years were years where we faced pandemic as the world faced pandemic. So I think that kind of fits in really nicely. We're giving them a prolong of 2 more years to vie for a professional career, more minutes, closer to the Super League. It's all up to them in the next 2 years. So I think that is the part that, to answer your question, is the transition of the players. They have to look at this and say, at some point, maybe 4 months ago, they thought, maybe their chance is done. Now they've got that little lifeline. If I were them, I've been there before, I'll put everything behind to make it as a professional. And if I fail, I give my best. But for me, this is the transition that should happen.
From club point of view, now more players to manage, and especially these younger players, they are there or they are still finding their way out. How it's going to be, how their career is going to pan out. There's so much expectation, and when youngsters and expectation, to fulfill that expectation, usually it's already a very you're already pushed to the edge, so it's do or die kind of thing. How much important for clubs to communicate to the players, especially these younger players, to keep them on board, to keep them understand that football is a marathon. It's not a sprint event. So to keep everyone on board, everyone on the same page, how crucial is communicating, especially to this younger group of players, the age group players?
I think it starts from the technical aspect. Okay, if you're setting up something of a structure where you've got 4 main teams, okay, Super League is given. You're gonna probably bring the best coach you can, some foreign, some local, but the most elite coaches with pro diplomas are going to be there with probably vast experience. So that's given. The under 23, you probably need to build a bridge that is almost seamless. The identity, the philosophy, the structure, the practices of the senior team falls upon, because that's probably likely where most players are going to be coming through the ranks. And then you got 21 and 19s. That's where I think the part that you got to have your technical team, which is led by the technical director, with really good development coaches who are passionate about getting these players through the ranks. Their dream is, I think whenever a coach says what he wants is he wants his players to actually move up the ranks more than winning, you probably already got the right kind of value in a coach. So these are the things that cannot be done on a paper, cannot be done through a laptop presentation, nice and proper to be seen, but the practices have to be real. It has to be. So when you said the word communicate, absolutely. It's physical. Got to be present. Got to be grinding on the pitch day in, day out, looking at players, observing, knowing more than what they do on the pitch, what's their life outside the pitch, before you get an entire culture right. Because that will be the most important ingredient. You get the culture right, then you start to get your philosophies right, then you start to get your DNA right. But if you look at the key bit here is recruitment. The recruitment of these certain leaders in these certain aspects of the technical needs to be spot on.
Okay, moving on to the operational part. This is the part that a lot of concern from the fans, football fans in Malaysia. It's open up for a club to sign up to 9 players. You are not forced to, but there's this perception that you must get these 9 players to be competitive. What do you think? Do you think we have to rely on fulfilling this foreign player quota, or it's just...
Well, I only can measure from my very own experience last year. I'll take this experience. We tried to play with 5 foreigners last year. We had Dominic injured early on, and then we signed another player called Kieran Nbuaze. he got injured after 70 minutes. We had no choice because we've done what we can from a management perspective. Having a chat with Boyan said, look, that's what we got. We've got to play with 4. So we converted Romel into a striker. We went on to win the Malaysia Cup. Not saying that can be a sustainable plan, but you got to work within the limitations that you're put in. So if you go with that mindset, your limitations is say 5 foreigners, 6 foreigners, then you got to work around it, so you don't have to really measure yourself with the rest. Yes, ideal world, 9 foreigners, depth, as we mentioned, forecasting injuries, forecasting suspensions are really crucial. But if you can't, then why force yourself into an area where it's your first year? You're trying to measure a lot of things that you don't know, unprecedented cost. How do you manage this many players? Then don't go into an area where you don't know unless you really want to try it out because you've got enough right people around you, and financially you can actually try to bring yourself into that space. So I really think you got to measure yourself, and we, like I said, KL can only measure themselves. We did it with 4. I'm not saying it's a long-term plan, but at sometimes when you're put into a space where you got limitations, you got to work with it. So if you put yourself in that mindset from the start, this is what I got to work with, then that's what you got to do to see out the season.
Audio Plus.